Welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. Today I'm joined in the studio by Professor Krzysztof Jabłonka, and we're going to talk about something which is becoming increasingly well known in Poland, but is of course less well known in the world, the NKVD operation against ethnic Poles shortly before the outbreak of the Second World War. Professor, thank you for joining us again. Can you say a few words about what this operation was by the NKVD, when it began and who was targeted?
W historii Związku Sowieckiego znane są tak zwane operacje narodowe.
The so-called national operations against Koreans and the Manchu people are very well known in the history of the Soviet Union. The lack of sympathy for communism was a good enough reason for the oppression of these people.
W sytuacji operacji polskiej już badacze rosyjscy, którzy to odkryli.
On the other hand, operations against Poles were called special operations. The oppressed people who held the highest social status, only leaders and intellectualists.
Intelektualiści, ludzie, którzy przewodzili, resztę zostawiano, bo to był, jak mówiono, raboczy kłas.
They didn't impress the working class. Exactly on Sunday, August 20th, 1937, Soviet oppression of the Poles began on the entire territory of the Soviet Union. They immediately attacked all Polish people, regardless of their social status, starting with men which were exported somewhere abroad and never came back.
Mężczyzn, których wywożono w nieznanym kierunku i nigdy już żaden żywy się nie pojawił.
Women were sent to the labor camps, where most of them died. Children were taken away from their mothers and placed in orphanages. In one of these houses in the city of Kharkov, I saw a document about a Polish child who died of an unknown cause. The child was taken away from his parents and refused to collaborate with the Soviet Union. For a very long time, people in Poland couldn't believe that these large-scale killings really happened. When I was working as a consul in Ukraine, I spoke with many children whose parents were oppressed. We needed to hear only 14 stories to realize that over 90% of population of Poland was exterminated in eastern Ukraine. When I came back to Poland, no one wanted to believe me, just like they couldn't believe in the Holocaust, which was beyond their imagination.
Ostatecznie Ukraińcy udostępnili archiwa.
After the liberation of Ukraine from the Russian occupation, we could have finally estimated the losses. Deaths were estimated at the minimum of 111,000 people. As it turned out later, the number was incorrect, because they counted only the fathers and not the entire families. In order to reach the real number of deaths, this number had to be triplicated. Because of the large scale of the extermination, we don't hesitate to call it the Polish Holocaust. One of the Polish research scientists called it Polocaust, which means an extermination of the Polish nation.
A jeden z polskich badaczy nazwał ją po prostu Polokaustem.
Now, Professor, there is a suggestion that in actual fact this action was designed by the Soviet Union to clear what they saw as a potential fifth column if they advanced westwards. How would you respond to that theory?
It is one of the theories by which we try to explain this completely incomprehensible phenomenon. To be honest, we still don't know why the Bolsheviks wanted to destroy the Polish nation so badly. The Russians themselves say that no other nation was oppressed in such a cruel way as the Polish nation. First of all, Poles were suspected of anti-Soviet attitudes. Secondly, the Bolsheviks were convinced that Polish culture had a huge anti-Soviet impact on other countries, which meant that other countries did not want to join the Soviet Union after they spent some time among the Poles. When the city of Kharkov was struggling with hunger, only the Polish community survived. Why? Because they were sharing their food. They all tried to help each other, not only physically, but also mentally. They also separated from the people. Only Armenians joined them. It is a great example of the impact that Polish culture had on other nations. According to the Bolsheviks, Poles were ignoring the existence of communism, which was punishable. We have to mention that Stalin was supporting Hitler for a while because he knew that Hitler was going to start a war. The second theory, which explains what you just said is that the Soviet Union viewed Poles as potential danger. That is why they decided to take care of the borderline first. Poles were deported to Kazakhstan, but paradoxically, all of them survived, because no one could have found them there. Suddenly, the decision to eliminate all Poles was made in 1939. They also wanted to intimidate them so that every Pole would be afraid to admit that he is a Pole. An elderly man from Kharkiv told me a story about his grandmother, who hid the fact that she was a Pole after seeing her husband being shot at a railway station. Her husband was a station master. Poles constituted 90% of all employees of that station. They were all arrested and shot dead. Today we can only look for their graves on the entire territory of the Soviet Union. There was also a group of Poles who gathered in the valley of Geyser on Kamchatka Peninsula to sing Polish songs. All of them were killed because they were recognized as infiltrators. All over Russia, the number of Polish graves is 9 times bigger than the number of the graves of the Russian soldiers killed between 1944 and 1945.
That's it for this edition of Poland Daily History, where we've learnt some facts that we knew or thought we knew, and some things we didn't know. So join us again on Poland Daily History, where we delve into the fascinating history that is Poland.